The new Lloydminster Nissan has moved into the Big Blue Building on Highway 16 West, formerly known as Border City RV. Shop in comfort with over 100 new and pre-owned vehicles all inside our giant showroom. This is the largest and the longest indoor sale in the history of the Border City. Sales and service all under one big roof. Come check out the massive savings in this massive building. The new Lloydminster Nissan, now in the Big Blue Building on Highway 16 West. The new Lloydminster Nissan. We won't sell you a car, we'll help you buy one.
Local people. Local news and events. Local sports. Local matters. For all things Lloydminster area, this is Live with Kurt Price.
Welcome to Patchwork. I'm your host, Kurt Price, and Tracy K is my co-host, and we're wearing the ugly sweaters, but our guests today are not wearing their ugly sweaters because they missed the memo. Brian Zinchuk is the owner-operator of Pipeline Online and, of course, writer and all that good stuff. And then Adam Waterman is the COO of Integrity Oil. And Tracy also tells me that he's not just the COO, he does everything in Integrity Oil. And of course, Tracy is part owner of Integrity Oil with Adam. So it's great to have you guys here today joining us for our kind of end of the year mishmash. And we'll take a look at some things. But first off, let's get this relationship thing out of the way. Integrity Oil. We heard about it, about 7 months ago that you guys were entering this partnership. How did that come about?
Well, really, it's Tracy's brainchild. He had, through knowing each other throughout the years, he had let me know that he was looking at buying some wells. Anyway, well, they keep me in the loop. You know, like this can be serious stuff, and if you don't do it right, you can lose a lot of money. I'll help you out any way I can. And it went from buying a few wells to buying half a field to all of a sudden him and a partner talking, or other investor talking about taking out this company. It's like, oh, this is actually gaining some steam. So, one thing led to another, and all of a sudden we got our junior oil and gas concern kicked off back in April. So it's good.
And how's it been?
Fantastic. It's been the time of my life. It was difficult for me to leave Baytex after so many years because, you know, great people, great company. I still think they're poised to, if in an increasing commodity market, they have the portfolio that you want to own as a shareholder. So it was fantastic to work there, and I couldn't leave it for any other opportunity than this. But Tracy, my childhood dream, and it's just fantastic.
Yeah. well, Tracy, like you were even out in the field today, Adam. So you're not just sitting at a desk. You're like Tracy. I don't even know if he went to work today. He's sitting in his basement.
Well, I'm always working, and you know, COVID has kind of got us to that situation where you can be working anywhere. And what the cool part about with Integrity is that we do a lot of times work from home. And that's if you're watching kids or doing whatever you need to. We work from home, and then we meet back at the office and that. But on a kind of touch up on the icing on the cake, we are ecstatic to have Adam aboard with us. And once again, it was that about just saying, hey, I'm looking at some stuff here, and then we're looking a little deeper, and then all of a sudden it's like, Adam, would you look at this overall package? And he goes, this is a really good deal. This is a great way for me to kick off. And I mean, the biggest part for us, we were already trying to go and do something. Adam taking the huge position he had and saying, I want to try and go after this. And I'm telling you, it's been one of the best things I've done in 40 years in this, in over 45 years doing this. And you always talk about getting into, I've always been on the vendor side. So here's my little 2-second spiel. I'm patronizing everybody because I'm a vendor. Now everybody's patronizing me because I'm the producer. And I just give them all to Adam. Say, you're the chief operating officer. He's the guy that's going to make those decisions. And it's just been working absolutely tremendous. And, you know, his insight on finding stuff for us. And my part is to, you know, I know a lot of people, and I try to bring us other deals and that to the table. And then Adam looks at them, and then we try to sort them out. But man, oh man, I've never been involved in more deals, and that doesn't mean we've connected on all of them, but yeah, all of a sudden you're a producer and all these other guys are coming to say hi, and that's the exciting part for sure.
If you don't mind my asking, where is your production, and would you say roughly about how much you have?
It's currently centered around the Lloydminster Basin, Lloydminster area, from Edam to Wildmere, and from Baldwin up to Tangle Flags. So it's a bit of a wide spread. We're kind of coring up in a few areas that will be actively developing over the coming 12 months, or a few years, actually. There's quite a bit of inventory that we've managed to build up. As Tracy alluded to, we've...
all chops?
Sorry?
That all chops?
No, actually, chops is less and less of a factor in our portfolio as time goes on, and will continue to slide. As I was saying, Tracy alluded to us doing a few acquisitions since the last public release of closing the initial edge transaction through bolt-on acquisitions. We've managed to triple our reserves, so all within current cash flow. So things are going very well, and now it's time to switch to execution mode for 2024 and get a bit in the ground and get some projects underway. So it's been going fantastic.
Adam, I'm curious. Like you had said that this is like a dream come true for you. When do you start when do you start thinking about that? When do you start getting serious about that? And like, how long has that been a dream of yours?
Oh man.
Oh God. I don't know. I grew up with like stories of like Ken Perol and Jamie Schwartz and all those guys going out there and basically being modern day wildcatters that were like idolized, right, by me and my peers. So like that, I don't even know when it would have started, but like it was always, I was building my career such that this is where I would go. And I just didn't anticipate it for another 2 decades. But it's every bit as fun as I would have hoped that it would be, and rewarding.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you've been associated with some politics too, Adam. Do you put that on the back burner now, kind of, because this came along sooner than you thought, or?
I've had to dial back my exposure provincially because of my role at Lakeline College. It's just not responsible to have a provincial political profile while being the chair of the board of governors. It's a huge risk for the institution. So I've pulled back from the provincial side largely, still active federally. So.
Okay. I'm just like, I admire that so much that you've reached that goal. I really admire that you set that goal and accomplished it. Like you said, 20 years early. That's fantastic. But 20 years early with a government that is unfriendly. You know what I mean? Like, was that a concern when you guys entered this partnership, going, is now the time, because of what you're faced with a federal government that doesn't look kindly on what you guys are doing?
I think we've kind of reached the nadir of
I agree,
of oil and gas, federal oil and gas policy, despite what Guilbeault has come out in the past week or at COP28 and stated the emissions cap. Before the Supreme Court weighs in, and his batting average ain't great at that court, I have no fear at all. It looks largely unconstitutional from my very amateur look, and some of the scholars that I trust in that arena have kind of erred on that side as well.
I wanted to ask you about that, both you and Tracy, because my knowledge out in the Northwest is a little bit stale, and I talked to the Premier about this on Monday. Is that, Alberta publishes June Warren used to publish an atlas this thick of all the gas plants in Alberta.
Yeah.
And Saskatchewan, I know of around 10 gas plants in all Saskatchewan. I know of one in the Southwest. I think near Corrobert. I don't know of any gas plants in Northwest Saskatchewan. Are there any?
There's 2 up by Pierceland. There's nothing really in the Lloyd block. Everything that we made, there were gas plants in the Lloyd area that have all been decommissioned and shut in, with the exception of some smaller stuff that kind of right on the line of big compressor gas plant, like where the line is. So like we don't have any amine units around. You don't.
So I guess my question of this is that how do you, with the new methane, no venting, no flaring allowed, and especially in the chops field, which I understand is diminishing.
Yeah.
How are you going to do that when you already don't? Chops doesn't have pipelines at all. Period. How do you deal with this whole methane cap if you don't have pipelines, and if it wasn't economical to build that stuff today, how is it more economical later? I just don't get that. And how do you drill anything new?
Okay, so kind of back to front on that. So chops, the early days of chops, and I'm calling that around the early 90s when we really started drilling in earnest prior to the Asian financial crisis, and then coming out of that was largely without any gas lines. As Directive 60 started to become implemented in Alberta, this is around 2000, when producers started to get a look at the idea that, okay, well, we have to be able to conserve some of this gas, and not all of it, but on the higher sites, we have to conserve it. Okay, now we have to start building out a gathering system. But also prior to 2007, gas was very economic to tie in. Like most of our wells are on 40-acre spacing, and well sites are a quarter mile apart. So back then you could run a gas line and get gas tied in, $12 gas, I might add, for $12,000. So it was very economic for us to conserve gas. After the US shale plays started really in the Marcellus and the Haynesville started coming on and driving gas down coming out of the great financial crisis, and those prices stayed suppressed, we had no economic incentive to tie in the gas. And that's what Directive 60 was really a response to, was the fact that what we used to do economically, now we can't. The case doesn't exist anymore. And D60 basically said, no, it's non-discretionary, you have to do it. So the gathering system really in place. There's not too many wells around that are more than a mile away from a tie-in point. One of the big problems on the Saskatchewan side is Transgas, is getting into the gathering system, because they're still working through what it looks like to have a monopoly in an area where you have probably 24 producers looking to sell gas into a line, which previously was only the purview of Transgas within a monopoly. So it's that the Saskatchewan side hasn't developed quite as much as the Alberta side, because of the presence of Transgas and the presence of that monopoly. But the Saskatchewan government looks to be addressing it. So.
Okay, I want to take a little break here, and we're going to take a little commercial break, and then we'll come back and we'll talk more about this emissions cap and where it's headed. But I also want to let you know about BioClean Disaster Services. Their commitment is to you. Their commitment is to your family, and their commitment, I would say, is also to this community and the surrounding area. They serve Lloydminster, Bonnyville, Cold Lake, and Wainwright area. And yes, they're going to take care of your possessions, and yes, they're going to take care of your property, but they're also really going to take care of you and your family. That means keeping you up to date along the way with what is happening with your rebuild, whether it's a rebuild from wind, fire, flood, whatever kind of disaster you're looking at. BioClean Disaster will keep you up to date and let you know where they're at in the rebuild. And yes, getting you back to where the things you thought every day were just so mundane. You're going to be looking forward to those things. You're going to want them back again. And they want to get you back to those things as soon as possible too. So call 1-833-246-8326. We'll be back in a moment on this special edition of Patchwork.
At Lloydminster and District Co-op, membership matters more. Because being part of a co-op means you're connected to something bigger than yourself. From long-held legacy by those who built our communities, to people you call family, friends, and neighbors. When you're a Lloyd Co-op member, you're an owner in a local business that prides itself on purpose alongside profit. You earn cash back, you help support causes that matter most, and you're building a better way of life for the next generation. Membership matters more.
I'm Brian Zinchuk of PipelineOnline.ca. I used to be a pipeliner, and I've spent the last 15 years reporting on energy in Saskatchewan. PipelineOnline.ca provides comprehensive coverage of light oil, heavy oil, lithium, helium, power production including coal, wind, solar, geothermal, natural gas, and nuclear. There's a lot happening in Saskatchewan's energy sector, and Pipeline Online is there for all of it. No one else comes even close.
It's more than just taxes at L&A CPA. Assurance, accounting, retirement planning, estate planning, business consulting, financial consulting, farm program support, and bookkeeping. But yes, there is always taxes. The team at L&A CPA is committed to helping you achieve your best results and will be there to assist you every step of the way. L&A CPA, with offices in Provost, Vermilion, and Lloydminster.
Well, welcome back. We're with Patchwork today. Adam Waterman and Brian Zinchuk are our guests. And I do want to remind you that at the new Lloydminster Nissan, we have moved outside of town, and you will now find us on Highway 16 West. And right now we're into the 10 days of Christmas deals. So if you're looking for a vehicle, now is the time to come out and see us. We have over 100 vehicles under the roof at the new Lloydminster Nissan, new and pre-owned. And actually, we have some outside now as well, because inventory is getting better and better all the time. And that means selection is at its best right now. And with the 10 days of deals, you are going to want to get out to the new Lloydminster Nissan and look for your new pre-owned car, truck, or SUV. We started to get into the emissions cap here, which I got to be honest, I don't understand at all. I don't understand how they could possibly do this. Adam, can you explain if this is a fart in the wind?
Is it what, sorry?
Is it a fart in the wind? Like, is this something that we're never going to actually see implemented? Or is this one of Stephen's dreams, or is this actually coming?
Definitely the former, undecided on the latter. It's definitely one of his dreams. Any nail he can put in the coffin of Alberta and Saskatchewan, he would gladly do it. I think Premier Smith's tone and tenor with respect to Mr. Guilbeault over the past few months is spot on. I think he's very much the same radical that was arrested all those years ago in the DC. Yeah. His tactics have changed, but it's still very much the same man with the same agenda. Is it plausible? Again, I can't really comment on the constitutionality of it, but I know what I can comment on is the fact that they are politically desperate. They're getting basically a consequence-free election, a piece of election platform out of the emissions cap, because Alberta will not anyway, right? So it's free for them politically. But as has been demonstrated, they have very little consideration for the Canadian Constitution, and until the Supreme Court weighs in on whether or not that is actually within their purview to implement, I'm not dedicating much thought to it, to be honest. I know that we can comply. We're compliant with the current regulations. We can take that further and still be a going concern. But I care very little for somebody who's in the sunset of their political career.
What would it do? What would it do to Integrity Oil?
To us, not much. We would obviously, there would be quite a bit more bureaucracy and extraneous tasks created out of it, but it would largely be looking at SAGD. That's where you can get, if you're looking for emissions reductions, you can get your biggest bang for your buck. And that's why we have Pathways Alliance doing the work that they're doing in order to address the carbon intensity per barrel of those operations within that project. So for us, we are very much, when you look at emissions intensity, primary heavy oil production definitely isn't great either. However, we're just so small relative to the SAGD producers that any regulations would largely be targeted at them. Secondary recovery.
So I think one of the things that we're seeing in recent months is that the federal government is really putting their knee on the neck of the energy industry. We've got the methane cap. So on the supply side here, so trying to choke off, methane cap, venting and flaring, emissions cap. And now we're looking at the other end, which is our market. Who are we selling to? And they're saying, well, I mean, most of our petroleum produced is used for transportation. Well, they announced yesterday that in 11 years and 2 weeks, you will not be able to buy a gasoline or diesel vehicle. They're all going to be electric. And there's a whole bunch to talk about that. But I mean, they're coming at from all ends. They really do want to see the sunset of our industry. And I talked to Mo about this yesterday a bit, on Monday. And, it's clear to him, it's no longer about the emissions. It's about the federal government wants to see us go away.
Yes. If you look at the emissions profile, it's pretty clear. And if you overlay where the emissions are coming from and where the liberal ridings are, it's pretty clear the political calculus that's going on here. It's nothing. It's not anything well thought out. It's very basic. The people who they're going to inflict punitive pain on don't vote for them anyway and never will. So it's politically free for them. It appeals to the ridings that they need to swing their way. And it's of lesser consequence for urban and metropolitan voters.
It's how do I put this nicely? It's scary. Like, what if it works, Adam? What if it works? Like, that's the thing for me. That's what's scary about it. What if it works? What if they get elected again? Like, nobody's putting it past him. Like, the guy is like the Teflon prime minister. Nothing is stuck with him. So he could pull this one out of the fire.
In 2019, my social media went crazy when he was reelected. And everyone said there was no way he was going to get reelected. Well, he's been reelected twice in that time, in 19 and was it 21? And the reality is that until the final vote is cast, we really don't know. And if he does get reelected, one of the things that I talked to Mo a bit about is this whole clean electricity regulations. That's the big 800-pound gorilla in the room.
Yeah.
Because number one, from our perspective, from the oil industry, we supply the natural gas for all the power plants.
Yeah.
Any given day in Alberta, up to 94% of the power is from natural gas with a little bit of coal. In Saskatchewan, it's up to 87%, roughly evenly split coal and natural gas. And the clean electricity regulations basically put in what the federal budget talked about in February. Budget talked about a 2 to 3 ratio. The CER says they anticipate the Canadian electrical grid is going to have to increase by a factor of 2.5 times in 26 years and 2 weeks. And I keep mentioning those numbers because it's sheer lunacy. I have a column I'll be putting out here soon. I just have to finish it up. South of Regina, they're currently twinning the highway that goes towards Estevan and Weber. And it's going to take them several years to do. They do 10 kilometers at a time, sort of thing. And it's a lot of headache. And that is to basically double one piece of infrastructure, just one highway. Now, what the CER is talking about is we need to not just double, but 2.5 times the equivalent of every single freeway, highway, street, grid road, back alley in the entire country at the same time. That's what they're envisioning for the electrical grid. Everywhere you have one power line, you're going to need 2 or more. Everywhere you have one transmission line, you're going to need 2 or more.
I will correct you on one thing. I very much agree with everything you said. But going back to a point I've already made, if you overlay a map of Liberal voters with the people that are impacted by the clean fuel standard, by going to a net zero grid, the people impacted aren't voting Liberal because it's largely only in Alberta, Saskatchewan, somewhat Manitoba problem.
Yeah.
Because everybody else is on hydro, which we obviously, being a prairie province, don't really have many options for. So yeah, but it's either that or if that becomes a law of the land, then we have to be talking about nuclear. And the fact that we're not tells me that the people making this policy are not serious about it. They're not serious about seeing it implemented if we're not talking about incentivizing nuclear.
I had a pretty lengthy discussion of Mo about exactly that.
They are talking nuclear in Saskatchewan, right? Maybe not so much in Alberta. Daniel has mentioned it recently.
Yeah, but Saskatchewan being a huge beneficiary of an increase in uranium demand. Right?
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Great.
Well, there's also
they want to be talking about it. They want to be talking about that as much as oil and gas.
Yeah,
Yeah. because of the deposits that are around for sure.
By the way, if you're playing along at home, this is a drinking game. Every time Brian says I got to call him, I just have to finish it up. You take a drink. So if you missed it, you're one behind.
Yeah.
But,
Man's a prolific writer. He writes some good stuff.
Well,
Everybody to get into it.
But Brian, what you were commenting about there too, I mean, at the end of the day is saying all of that. What is the figures? We're getting 3 figures usually every month for our power bill. That's going to go to a 4-figure amount real quick, would not, in our power bill? You know, if our bill's 300, what says it's not 1,000?
Oh, absolutely.
You know, like my niece and her husband live in Denmark and love them, and they're awesome and all that good stuff, but they're running into some tough stuff over there. $1,000 a month for their power bill on scheduled times. $1,000 a month in Denmark right now on scheduled times. Oh, can't put the turkey in right now. Got to wait till we can get back higher grid on the grid. $1,000 a month just for power on scheduled time. That's ridiculous.
Absolutely absurd. So, I mean, there's a couple elements to that. One is that, especially Saskatchewan and Alberta, we're going to be hit with this ever-increasing carbon tax, unless Poilievre gets rid of it. And then if we are going to go to a zero emissions type of power generation, it really means that we're going to have to build large amounts of nuclear. I mean, the numbers that we've talked about, Saskatchewan initially said we're going to build 4 small modular reactors, each 300 megawatts. That isn't even enough to replace our coal. And by the summertime, the minister, when I was questioning him, and he was saying, well, we're looking at maybe up to 9. And then Mo started talking about large reactors, and I talked to him about this just 2 days ago, is that we may be looking at 1,000-megawatt reactors. So we're probably going to build first we're going to build some micro ones. Saskatchewan just funded the first micro reactor of 5 megawatts, Westinghouse reactor. I'll come back to Westinghouse in a second because that's very important to this.
Mm-hmm.
Then we're going to build small modular reactors, at least 2 of them, likely at Estevan. And then we'll probably build some more of those. And then once our grid gets big enough, and if demand from electric vehicles and everything else, and electrification of our heating comes up, then we're going to start talking about building 1,000-megawatt reactors. Now, here's the key thing. Westinghouse, which is one of the 2 major reactor builders in North America, or 3, I guess. You have CANDU, which is SNC-Lavalin. You have Westinghouse, you have General Electric. Cameco, which is the corporate darling of Saskatchewan, just cleared the deal here in October that they now own 49% of Westinghouse. So anything that Saskatchewan buys from Cameco or from Westinghouse is effectively buying Saskatchewan. So that changes the entire equation for all of us. And you're talking about, yes, it definitely will be the growth of the nuclear industry in Saskatchewan. But if you look at the royalties that Saskatchewan gets from nuclear or from uranium compared to oil, it's a small fraction.
And even in a growth scenario, even in the high growth scenario, that ratio will pretty much remain the same. But that Westinghouse stuff, like, I've been privy to a few conversations regarding their technology, and it's absolutely fantastic. Like, to be honest, I see it and I just think, oh my God, imagine the steam and oil I could make if I had that.
Yeah. So
micro nuclear facility, like something below 5 megawatts, that's a 3rd class or 2nd class one-stir boiler. So if you're making steam with that instead of gas, SAGD gets real cheap real fast.
Yeah.
The CapEx goes up, obviously, because being nuclear, but the OpEx goes way down.
Interesting. I had not thought of that.
What are the casualties, or what are the concerns? As soon as you say nuclear, you think Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles for any villages that are nearby. What do you know of that, Adam? Like, I don't know enough about nuclear to know how dangerous it can be as well.
I know enough about it I would not be opposed to it at all. If a group got together like Bruce Power did previously and they want to put one on the north side of Lloyd, I would have no concerns. I would not be part of the opposition for it. I believe it would be opposition, however, because soon as nuclear starts to become part of the equation, HBO puts out another special like Chernobyl and prices tank. So personally, that's always prevented me from taking a meaningful position in the uranium market. I know others that have, but until and like these things, Chernobyl, 3 Mile Island, these things are generations old, and there's still the public perception that nuclear is dangerous.
Yeah. Interesting you mentioned the Lloydminster location, because when I asked Mo about the large reactors, I suggested they might go to Elbow, and he actually mentioned that the possibility of tying in with the Alberta grid and something that's more central. So I think he was referencing a Lloydminster location.
Yeah.
Lloyd would be a fantastic location. We've got the North Saskatchewan River.
Yeah.
Which is great for cooling water. If you need it at all, to be honest. Tied into both provinces. A lot of the technology used in nuclear is the same things that we use in SAGD to generate steam, because that's really all you're doing with nuclear is making steam. So we have a lot of the technology, we have a lot of the skill sets, we have a lot of the training programs in place. We could scale to meet a nuclear within 12 months from a labor force perspective, because it's already half there. Plus, we have we have both rail lines
in place too. Yeah.
So getting modular equipment here would be very easy.
Would it be the same resistance that was there, do you think, a few years ago when Bruce Power was looking at coming? Because what I remember about that is there was a lot of blue hairs. There was a lot of older people that were.
You're gonna start dropping blue hairs with that mop?
Well,
let's not denigrate the senior citizens.
I remember going to they had a seminar at Vic Juba Theater. Do you remember that?
I do.
And one of the guys from Bruce, Bruce Power got up and he said, a lot of people when they go to the beach, they swim closer to the reactors because the water's closer to our facility because the water's warmer. There was a murmur, there was a stutter, there were people, oh my God, oh my, like I thought there was going to be some heart attacks in the building. Have we've learned a little bit since then, haven't we?
And hopefully we've learned a little bit of PR, because that would be, if I was on the stage of that and both representing Bruce, my head would be my hands. That brings to mind a case in Pickering where they were actually killing fish because they were releasing their cooling water too warm. It was warming the water up too much, deoxygenating it and killing fish. Not a great selling feature, really, if you're trying to get these things off the ground.
Yeah.
Now my blue hair is standing up.
Yeah. I really do think there would be a similar level of opposition, because you look at your blue hairs, Kurt.
You said
they've got Chernobyl. Then the next generation is 3 Mile Island, and recently we have Fukushima. Like, granted, there's not going to be a tsunami on the prairie, but every generation pretty much has their touch point with a nuclear disaster. A lot of the Cold War generation, they're moving, they're no longer in the equation, but it's still there for a lot of people. Like, people think nuclear, they think Chernobyl. They don't think Pickering, but it's been running for 60 years now.
Yeah. I think there's especially in the last 2 years, I think there's been a global renaissance in people rethinking nuclear. Other than the Germans shutting down their plants, even COP28, there was 24 nations that signed on to triple their nuclear capacity. And I think, and it's whatever you think about greenhouse gases and stuff like that, if you buy that we've got to reduce greenhouse gases every way you can, and the reality is that wind and solar prove to be totally unreliable, the only option you have left on the table, and this is what the Saskatchewan government is saying, is it's nuclear or nothing.
Yeah. And from me personally, that's how I know that a lot of these regulations are meant to come to fruition. Because there would be a means of expediting nuclear development. If we were actually talking about replacing our current generative baseload, we would be talking seriously about nuclear, and we would be moving fast to do it.
Do you think they're that smart, Adam? Adam, do you think they're that smart though? Because I just don't think they think things through. Like, they didn't think through the carbon tax.
They're smart. They just have different beliefs. There's intelligent people on both sides of the debate.
Yeah.
But they're the intelligent people on the other side of the debate from me are allying themselves with low information voters, just like every side does. It's not unique to them.
Yeah.
That are thinking wind and solar are forever, that we don't need to do anything with it, that it just sits there and it's not going to be a problem. Nuclear scary, so we just go with that.
I've got a story. At least once a month for the last 24 months, I've reported on how the Alberta grid has gone to essentially zero wind power. Of course, it goes to zero for solar every night. They've nearly doubled the amount of wind generation in Alberta. And actually, something that came up here just recently, I haven't had a chance to dig into it, but they say, well, wind and solar reduce the price of power. That's wonderful. But there was an instance a couple of days ago where the pool price for power in the Alberta Electric System Operator went to zero. And you might think that's great, but no, it's not, because no business can survive of zero price for their product. So if all the other generators on a grid are getting zero for their product for that day because wind made it so cheap, that does not help their business case at all.
Oh, so yeah, we were just recently, probably a couple months ago, down south in that Hannah country, and they're just, I couldn't even count how many of those turbines were parked at the Hannah Cactus gas station there, and then all the other ones that were on plans to erect down there, and just massive amounts of them being put up there and down in that Hannah area.
And their construction methods. So for the oil and gas types that are listening, the closest thing that I can compare that area to, the special areas in eastern Alberta, would be Mackenzie County in the boom time of the Bakken. Like just trucks ripping and tearing, and like you can't get a hotel anywhere. Like it's nuts. And Premier Smith's pause on renewable permits, it's my hope that it provides these construction companies a little bit of time to think about their practices. Because right now they're out there pretending to work to oil and gas standards, and they are a far cry from it.
Yeah.
They are leveraging the landowner's familiarity with our techniques to get right of access, and then not coming near the quality of work that we would put out.
Yeah.
They are compacting soils. They are admixing soils. They are working off right away. These guys are cowboys. So the idea that she put a pause on it, I think is fantastic. It's to the voters on the other side, it looks like she's attacking wind. But if you talk to the people whose land these guys are on,
I was just going to say,
they are not real happy.
They're not happy with any of that stuff. You got to go behind the scenes to find out what these guys are doing to the landowners, and after they're finished there, are they leaving a nice non-issue environmental footprint when they get out of there? And I'm not hearing that either, Adam, what you just said.
Is that how you guys know you've talked to the landowners?
Oh yeah.
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 That is.
I haven't heard one that's been complimentary of them. And if they're, some are indifferent and some are fit to be tied.
Wow. Okay, we're going to take another short break, and when we come back, I want to ask you guys about your meeting with Jim Reeder, and we want to ask Brian a few questions too about his conversation with Scott Moe, as we have two governments, Alberta and Saskatchewan, that are not playing nice with the federal government, and for us, that's a good thing. So we'll take a look at that in just a moment.
At Jason Arden Associates Cooperators, we're proud to be a top-rated local insurance company that offers flexible solutions and expert advice for all your insurance and investment needs. We'll work with you to tailor your insurance specific to your needs, and we offer investment advice that always puts you first. At Cooperators, one of our core values is to support the communities we live in. When you support Jason Arden Associates Cooperators, you are supporting local nonprofits and initiatives. Since 2020, we have donated $60,000 to local nonprofits, youth, sponsorships, and various special projects. When was the last time your insurance company did that?
How can you help support the oil and gas industry and jobs in Western Canada? The answer is closer than you think. Sell your scrap metals to PWM Steel. PWM sells scrap iron to Evraz, located in Regina. Evraz's #1 customer is the energy sector, building pipes and plates for the oil and gas industry. PWM Steel is your locally owned metal recycler and steel service center in the area. Plus, they're a strong supporter of the community. PWM Steel, your top steel supplier for Alberta and Saskatchewan for 40 years.
At Diamond 7 Meats, we work with local farm families to provide a high-quality product and a great selection for you. Try our mouth-watering smokies, pulled pork, roast beef, and more, made pure and natural with no additives or fillers. We offer custom processing, and our experienced team works for you to provide a selection of sausage, burgers, and jerkies made to your specifications. Take your grilling to the next level with a Yoder smoker. Complete the grilling experience with Canadian-made, award-winning line of House of Q barbecue sauces. We're locally owned and operated, and we look forward to seeing you today.
Welcome back to Patchwork. Our guests today are Adam Waterman and Brian Zinchuk, and of course, you know, Tracy K, my co-host. It's great to have you guys here. Just before we get back into it, I want to let you know about Superior Water. It's not just a name, it is Superior Water. With 2 locations in Lloydminster, they're open on Sundays to make filling your big blue jugs a whole lot quicker. And if you want great tasting water right from your tap, you can call Superior Water and ask about the reverse osmosis under the sink systems, 875-6636. I drink Superior Water because I like the taste, and I believe it is superior. Plus, I really like that they're open on the weekends. They are open Monday to Friday, 8 to 6, Saturdays and Sundays, 10 to 5. Plus, of course, don't forget their coin-operated location on Highway 17 South beside 7-Eleven. I mentioned we have 2 governments that aren't playing nice in the sandbox with the federal government, and that's to say the least. You guys had a meeting with Jim Reeder. Was that a meeting, Adam and Tracy, that you guys were able to voice your concerns, or was this a meeting that the Saskatchewan government asked for with you guys?
I'll let Adam answer that right after my 2-second spiel. We had Gary Becker from Longhorn Oil and Gas on, and Gary's kind of like us. He's very passionate about what's going on and tries to communicate lots with the Saskatchewan government. And there was a town hall meeting in Macklin, and he wanted to see if we could round up some more producers to come down there. And of course, that's just totally up Adam's alley. And so we went down there, and Jim had some of his people there, and yeah, he wanted to hear from the producers. Adam, you go ahead, take it from there.
So it was one of a series of town halls that Minister Reeder routinely does within each production region. And I think it's just an example of how Saskatchewan has just absolutely surpassed Alberta.
Yeah,
in terms
for that
of
reason.
Regulation. They keep their organization very flat. Saskatchewan, there's not a lot of bureaucracy. There is a lot of authority lying low in the regulator, that you can get common sense decisions quickly. Cycle time, I don't know of a single thing that Alberta would do from a regulatory perspective that would exceed Saskatchewan. And
I agree.
Much was not that case previously.
I agree.
So, Minister Reeder making the time to tour these small town community centers to meet with the local oil and gas producers, I think is just another example of how Saskatchewan does oil and gas policy right.
Mm-hmm.
What did you guys learn from that, or what were you able to tell him?
Largely, I don't have a lot of complaints about Saskatchewan. Saskatchewan's fantastic. I had my moment to the podium, Minister Reeder, waiting for what I had to say. I was like, just keep doing what you're doing. It's great.
Yeah.
There's no complaints in Saskatchewan. It's fantastic. The biggest thing about them right now that I would be concerned about is complacency, because they are the best. They're probably the best in North America. But the AER was the best at one time too. And
yeah, they were.
They deviated from that path. So my caution to him was just watch out for complacency and keep that authority low in the organization. That's how you beat back bureaucracy that can just gain and grow over time, right?
I'm hearing entirely opposite from Southeast Saskatchewan producers. A month ago, the minister drove 2 hours down here so we could spend 3 hours in my SUV hearing me go like this. And I showed him everything from where I expect the nuclear power plant to be built, to the solar plant, to the transmission line to the US. And we drove through the Torquay oil field, showed him the geothermal project, as well as the first lithium thing that we're likely going to get built. And I pointed out to him that there was not one drilling rig working west of Estevan. Not one. And the rig count in southern Saskatchewan has been brutal. I mean, we've been running 11, 13 rigs, one of which is drilling for potash. The rig count is so low, in fact, that we've got companies that have been around for over 60 years that are hardly servicing any rigs anymore. It's when I talk to the local producers, people of your scale there, none of them are happy. And in fact, I asked a number of them, what should I tell the minister? And they are saying that, look, every week we're getting another email of a new regulatory thing we have to deal with. They feel that the regulatory creep has been dramatic over time when you add it all up. And they think that's one of the reasons why they were not getting much drilling activity. We're seeing larger producers pull back from Southeast Saskatchewan. I talked to some very intelligent people yesterday, and over the last several months, I've actually started a pool as to when they expect Crescent Point to sell out of Southeast Saskatchewan. The bets are right now in less than 6 months. So the reality is that we've seen a dramatic curtailment of activity here for new drilling. The provincial government, including the premier and the ministers, blame the federal government. The producers here say, we don't deal with the federal government. We deal with the provincial government. That is our point of contact, and we're not happy about it. So if we get a chance to later this week, I'll be posting that portion of the interview I had with the premier. And that's one of the reasons, I'm guessing, because he talked about Ryder going out to talk to yourself and talk to other people. The provincial government is realizing something is not right here. When oil was up to $90 a barrel and we did not see an uptick in activity, something is wrong. I've been kind of, bringing that bell pretty loudly, and they are taking notice. I will say that.
What's your response to that, Adam?
Well, firstly, I'm not in Southeast Saskatchewan, so I can contrast with the AER, and I can tell you that there's still a substantial benefit to being in Saskatchewan.
Yes.
The biggest thing that I would point to is a lot of people kind of anchor their thinking back to the start of the downturn of 2014. Now, despite that, us still not being back to that pricing level, across the border to the south, the rig count is only 25% of what it was. So your offsetting jurisdiction with a very similar geology and very similar development cycle is experiencing the same thing. So it's tough for me to lay it at the regulator. The regulator can't control rock. If you're out of rock, that's it.
Yeah.
So I know that there's going to be some royalty incentives to try and lengthen out Bakken wells to kind of stimulate more development down there. But no oil producer is in one area forever. Husky was around here forever. They're not here anymore. CNRL's been here since the early 90s. There's going to be a day when they're not. So the idea of it will be a significant touchstone in the life cycle of the Bakken if Crescent Point moves out of their position there. It will not be a significant touch point in the regulatory environment of Saskatchewan. I'll say that. I think that's fairer to say.
There's one other thing that's going on, and maybe, I don't know if this is happening in your area, but it's happening in the Clearwater area of Alberta, and it's grown to here. About a year ago, or maybe a little more than that, Cache Island, which was headed by, or is headed by Scott Saxberg, former CEO of Crescent Point, started drilling 8-leg wells. And more particularly, they're drilling 8-leg wells in the Bakken, and they're not fracking them, which removes about $750,000 of expense, ballpark. And they're getting really good production. They're getting initial production around 300 barrels, give or take. So Crescent Point started drilling similar wells right next to them. And now Saturn's also drilling similar wells in the same area. And even Midale Petroleum's, which is very efficient with their spending, let's say, they're drilling 4-leg wells. Yep. And the point of this is that while the rig activity is low for this region, it's very low. It used to be a rig was drilling every 6 days. You'd move. You need new casing. You need new mud. You need a rig move, and you're doing this 4 times a month. Well, these new multilateral wells they're 28-day wells. So your casing guy is only out there once a month. You're doing 1 rig move a month, Your pipe haulers are only moving casing once a month.
Mhm.
All your ancillary services are all of a sudden suddenly being reduced by a factor of 75%. And this is after taking a 50% kicking in the downturn, like you said, of 2015. So what I'm really afraid of is that, yes, technologically, this is maybe a huge advancement, and it may be good for the province for production, it may be good for the oil companies for much less expenses. But when you're talking about the service companies, we might end up looking like the Newfoundland cod fishery. Unless we get more drilling activity happening, we've got to get something to keep these services going. Otherwise, we may run the risk in a few years' time of losing critical path services.
Well, we've kind of circled around to probably the internal conflict that Tracy faces every day, having a foot in both sides of the football. Oil and gas producers do not exist for the benefit of service companies. They exist for their own benefit. They're
100%
onto themselves.
And you're hearing that
I will lower my costs any way that I can. And if that means that a service company is no longer receiving any work from me, well, that's how technology progresses.
We have
the
to have
multilaterals in the Bakken, on the periphery of the tier 1 rock that you're seeing now, that could add a new life to it. Without that, it's not one instead of the other. It's that, then this. It's an evolution. It's allowing tier 2 rock and worse to be drilled economically, whereas otherwise it wouldn't be.
Yeah,
it's not substitutive. It's evolution.
From a vendor's perspective too, you know, like Adam just said, you're appreciating the side of both of them, and so I have to go put one hat on this side and go, awesome, we're super efficient. Did it mean that it was stuff that we didn't maybe need to provide as much on? And we've gone through that. We've had many conversations, Adam and I. But what he's bang on, Brian, and saying this very sympathetically and warmingly and lovingly, that as vendors, because I know both sides of this now, I've got enough experience on both sides in a very short period of time of saying vendors have no choice but to get diversified. If whatever that may look like, and finding new widgets or whatever it is, and saying I've got a new widget for multilateral. I mean, you know, Adam has told me lots of stories where some of these wells just don't go down for a long time. Well, well servicing is less. Pipe and tubing are still staying really good on this well. You're not, issues of sand, there's not as big as a strong a thing on them. And then they're producing better than they ever did. We've got to try to create stuff that when we get one hit at the plate, one chance at the plate with the bat, that we're hitting something good enough that maybe is an added value service to that one well that makes up for 4 or 5 wells that we used to do. And that's just tremendously smart technology. And I'm on the show here with you guys, but that's really, it's just part of what's going on. We're getting smarter at these. And I used to be a guy that used to spit out multilateral out of my mouth. And honestly, as a producer now, just some places are just having astronomical results from that. And I'm going, that's kind of my ice cream flavor now. If we could, we'd probably be doing more of that. And Adam emphasizes that more than I do because he just understands that stuff better. So is that okay, Brian?
to put some numbers, Brian, I am sympathetic to the people on the ground who where their phones are not ringing like they used to. But for us locally, we kind of peaked with CHOPS development around 2011, 2012. Yeah. And from there, producers, each at their own pace, began to progress to primary horizontal development. At peak in 11 and 12, we had about just over 200 service rigs based out of Lloydminster that called Lloydminster home. And now, like, I don't know if we'd have 50.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. So, for example, we've got one rig moving company in Southeast Saskatchewan, and they had 7 truck spreads that could move 2 rigs a day, and they were moving 10 years ago. They were moving up to 14 rigs in a day. Yeah. And now, servicing the same area, we've got 13 rigs working, of which 1/3 of which are moving once a month. Yeah. So, the reality is that is a tremendous reduction in what they need. And what happens if, for instance, and I'm not suggesting they're going to, because I know they've got pretty deep pockets. What happens if a critical path service like the one, rig moving company pulls up, or use cementing, for instance, or any other critical path thing like that, where there is only down to one service? What happens if they go away? How
the rate increases until the point where it becomes cheaper to bring somebody in from out of market. That's what happens.
Very long drive to Estevan.
Yep.
But again, it's quantifiable what that costs for an Estevan rig mover to basically stick somebody in a hotel in Weyburn, or sorry, in, where did you say? Not Estevan.
Well, it's the same
wherever.
Yeah.
Like we've seen this, I've seen this play out in service lines across both provinces. The guy in town A will increase his rate to survive up to the point where the producer starts looking down the road to bring somebody in from 2-3 hours away. And he dang well better be sure that he doesn't increase that rate too far. Because soon as he's gone too far, well, then that's it. But that's capitalism. That's the market playing out as it should. And
yeah, Brian, you look
we have the freedom for that to function.
Yeah. You look at even these multilaterals, like, you said 300 barrels. That could be to an average producer or something like that. 300 barrels, that could be 10 wells, Brian. All of a sudden you're putting that into, let's just even say 6 wells at 50 barrels each a day. That one well now, where those guys used to bounce around for 650 barrel wells a day, they're doing that in one well now. The technology and multilaterals and some of this stuff. And from a producer side of things, yeah, they're going to go, hey, could I get 300 barrels out of one well? I'm Adam and I have these conversations all the time. I'm jealous. I'm saying, you mean to tell me these guys have 3 wells and can be doing more production than what most junior producers are doing with 3 wells? Some, Brian, even only 1 well. So that's how far some of this game has gone.
Don't get me wrong about the whole, evolution of technology. Yeah. I mean, I've been writing about the evolution of technology for 15 years now.
Yeah.
And I mean, we've seen that this happen in many ways, but this could be a step change. I had one question I wanted to ask you guys here, because I asked Mo about this. The province of Saskatchewan a few years ago said, we're going to set a production goal of 600,000 barrels a day. And we're currently doing about 450. So that's an increase of about a third.
Yep.
And I told Mo that I haven't seen any concrete effort from the province to actually make that happen in the 6 years you've got left in that time frame. Am I wrong on that? Have you seen anything concrete that would see us increase production by 30% or 33% in the next 6 years?
Yes. So biggest thing was leaving the freshwater draws from the North Saskatchewan River alone. That has allowed a lot of SAGD development to progress that otherwise wouldn't on the other side of the border. That's why we have about 24 5 to 10,000 barrel thermal facilities on the east side of Lloyd and 0 on
the west side.
The rock's the same. The only difference is Saskatchewan doesn't make us regenerate the water. Alberta does. So producers have been working for years to get a regulatory carve out to match Saskatchewan and Alberta, and they've been unsuccessful. On top, so that has papered over a lot of the decline in the Bakken and in southeast and southwest Saskatchewan, that ramp of SAGD development. Next up would be incentivizing multilateral horizontals to build out the tier 2 acreage in the Bakken and to also complements the Manville group that's present around the Lloydminster area also. That's what they should do. And to the best of my knowledge, they are. So the fact that we're not at 200 in Saskatchewan is fantastic work by Premier Mo and Minister Ryder and Minister Eyre preceding him. That's allowed that to happen and allowed a lot of people to go to work every day.
Yeah.
The next step would be incentivizing multilateral development.
Let's get into.
Go ahead, Kurt.
Well,
and I could do that in 6 years for sure.
Yeah.
let's take a look at where we're at right now with what is happening with the price of oil. Is it back up again today? Because it had dipped a little bit. And then how much of an effect is what is going on overseas with these pirates? I guess there's no other way to call them. That's what they are, with these Houthis that are boarding these ships. What is that doing to the price, and how close does somebody like Integrity have to follow something like that?
I'm just going to tell you today.
Very close.
Yeah,
Very
like
close.
oil prices today on oil price, BOE is probably more accurate, but 52.94 US a barrel for our Western Canadian Select, and 73.86 for the WTI. Adam being a producer tends to go to the BOE side more. I think it's probably more accurate to Joe just going online and seeing what oil pricing is doing. But Adam, you can elaborate on that, because we were just looking at some of our stuff that we were putting on, and we were waiting for the OPEC announcements to see how warm and fuzzy we were on that. That's how close Adam and our company, I don't know, I'm sure there's other experts out there for other companies watching that, but thank God we have somebody like Adam that says, hey, let's just see what these guys got to say if we're going to go out and drop a couple more service rigs onto some locations.
So the Houthi rebels, the drone attacks, the indiscriminate drone attacks, which will largely be very poor for them in the long run. They're not discriminating on whose ships they attack anymore with their drones. It's basically, think of a fleet of just drones coming at a ship. They're Iranian backed. They're a rebel group in Yemen. The Red Sea feeds it up north into the Suez Canal, which made news last year with Evergreen getting stuck in it, and everybody remembers over that and how it's going to spur inflation. So some estimates, with the amount of traffic between Maersk and other major carriers diverting traffic around the Cape of Good Horn and going back to pre-Suez Canal, like 1930s shipping patterns or 20s shipping patterns, is the impact of 500,000 barrels a day. So call it 0.5% of incremental oil demand just from the added shipping. Now, combined with that in and of itself would not move oil as it has in this past week. Within oil price, there's obviously supply and demand, but on top of that, there's the speculators that everybody on both sides of the equation loves to rag on when price has moved too much in any one direction.
Yeah.
But they are there, and I call them the froth on oil price. Right now, the managed money positions from speculators are at their lowest point since COVID. That's how bearish people are on oil right now. Largely, I don't buy into it. I have been accused of being a perma bull when it comes to oil, and it's probably accurate because there's an emotional element to it. But some market participants were convinced that the U.S. is going to continue to turn out more and more production, and eventually that OPEC is just going to say uncle again, and it's going to be the Thanksgiving Day massacre of 2014 again, where they just open the floodgates and crush the market. I'm not in that camp. I'm not in the camp that we're going to a deep recession globally.
I'm not either.
Doing China, and they're going to be a problem for a long time. Europe's being Europe, which is basically stagnated for half a generation now, since the great financial crisis. So where the demand growth is still there, though, because India is still churning out more and more middle-class citizens every day. So with the managed money positions and the speculators being so short on oil, everything trends back to an average, and it was going to come back. Yeah. The Houthi attacks in the Red Sea are just the reason why that this short cycle ended. It's not, I don't think that the issue is going to stretch on for weeks and months. I don't think it's going to be a major geopolitical flashpoint, because if it gets too hot, Iran's going to yank their funding. And like, you should see what the Israeli Defense Forces say about these Houthi rebels. Like, they are just like amateurs. This is not a high-tech, highly sophisticated operation. They attacked one ship, they said, because it was from Israel. It turned out it was from Ireland or somewhere. It's like, really? Like, you're risking getting bombed into the dark ages, and you didn't even get the right country?
Yeah. Started with an I.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I don't think this is going to be a long-running conflict in the Red Sea.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just don't. But the short cycle needed a reason to end. This was it. So we're ending oil. the oil's going to end a week in the green for the first time in a while, or substantially in the green for the first time in a while. And I've got every reason to think next week's going to be the same.
I do too.
As those managed money positions begin to grow. And you'll see that on Friday in the commitment to trade report. So.
Well, gentlemen, are we forgetting anything? Are we leaving anything out there? Brian, you got anything else?
You know, I some days I think I'm half-ass smart. Then I get in a conversation with Adam Waterman or Matt Cugnett, and I realize how dumb I am. So
I can't write like you. You got that. Right.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm from if there's a final note, I'm with Adam. We didn't get into this. We felt our timing was right this year in 2023. We would like to have a few more of those $100 a barrel things come our way a little quicker back then, but timing is everything. And you know, we didn't get in this to be scared, and we didn't get in this to be that we're not optimistic. There's just my line. I've always said the electricity, the electric car, and all of that stuff is not gaining any momentum, in my opinion. And there's more and more people on the earth, and there's going to be fossil fuels around for a long time that we need to supply them with. And we've got a good product, and I'm very optimistic about that going into the next year. So that's just kind of my 2024 predictions that, you know, I bump and rub Adam's shoulders a lot because I think he's keen on what's going on out there, like you just said, Brian. And as Kenny Rogers' song, know when to hold them, know when to fold them, know when to walk away, and know when to run. I think we've got a good handle on the game of what we're trying to do. And I think that I'm staying tremendously optimistic going into 2024 for that reason.
You too, Adam? Are you optimistic?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm not going to call. There's some guys out there with some very aggressive forecasts, and I'm not one of them. I'm basing our business on the fact that I don't think we'll see $50 oil in 2024 and surviving there.
What would a change of government do in 2024 if it happened in the first 6 months?
It would nothing for our investment plans. The things that the federal government affects are 3 to 5 years out.
Yeah,
they're not day to day. They don't impact day to day decisions. That's purely the bailiwick of provincial regulators and provincial governments. Where the feds can impact our business is 3 to 5 years down. And in the short term, what they do is they impact equity markets, where people will stay away from Canadian oil and gas in the event of a hostile federal government, which we have now and have had for 8 years now.
What about if Pierre comes in and acts as the tax? How quickly of a
good question?
Because you've told us, Adam, that could have a negative effect as well. So how quickly do you think that would happen?
I believe that if Pierre was intelligent, which I have every reason to think he and his staff are, that they would move within the first 6 months to bring out their carbon tax. Again, I don't believe that they will completely get rid of it. I believe that they will substitute it for something else that takes it away from, that removes it from retail or from people, basically.
And put it on the producers.
Corporations paying in large emitters, like the tier program in Alberta.
Right.
That's what I would expect out of them.
John Chrétien promised to get rid of the GST, and I'm still filing for it myself. So
yeah, right. Like it's So I don't think that carbon tax is dead. I think people will stop paying carbon tax.
Hey, thanks everybody. Really appreciate you guys joining us. It has been. I've learned so much today. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to talk to us. I want to wish each one of you a very Merry Christmas, and hopefully you do get some time off, Adam. And by that, what I really mean by that is I hope you get some time away from Tracy.
I got the best job in the world. I don't want time off.
And he said that publicly, by the way, Price. So the other part is he's got to deal with me one more time because we're having our Christmas party tonight. So,
oh, by the way, I added the extra ugly sweater there, the Eskimos jersey or the Elks jersey, whatever you want to say. So if anybody's wondering, I just add that's going back in the closet as soon as we're done here. Okay.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
Sounds good.
Merry Christmas.
All the best, guys. Merry Christmas, everybody.
See you guys.